Address at Jaffna, Part 2. For and on behalf of the Hindus of Jaffna, an eloquent reply was given, and on the following evening, the Swami lectured on Vedantism, a report of which is here appended. The subject is very large and the time is short. A full analysis of the religion of the Hindus is impossible in one lecture. I will, therefore, present before you the salient points of our religion in as simple language as I can. The word Hindu, by which it is the fashion nowadays to style ourselves, has lost all its meaning, for this word merely meant those who lived on the other side of the river Indus, in Sanskrit, Sindhu. This name was murdered into Hindu by the ancient Persians, and all people living on the other side of the river Sindhu were called by them Hindus. Thus, this word has come down to us, and during the Mohammedan rule, we took up the word ourselves. There may not be any harm in using the word, of course, but as I have said, it has lost its significance. For you may mark that all the people who live on this side of the Indus in modern times do not follow the same religion as they did in modern times. The word therefore covers not only Hindus proper, but Mohammedans, Christians, Jains, and other people who live in India. I therefore would not use the word Hindu. What word should we use then? The other words which alone we can use are either the Vedikas, followers of the Vedas, or better still, the Vedantists, followers of the Vedanta. Most of the great religions of the world owe allegiance to certain books which they believe are the words of God or some other supernatural beings, and which are the basis of their religion. Now, of all these books, according to the modern savants of the West, the oldest are the Vedas of the Hindus. A little understanding, therefore, is necessary about the Vedas. This mass of writing called the Vedas is not the utterance of persons. Its date has never been fixed, can never be fixed, and according to us, the Vedas are eternal. There is one salient point which I want to remember, that all of the religions of the world claim their authority as being delivered by a personal God or a number of personal beings, angels, or special messengers of God onto certain persons, which the claim of the Hindus is that the Vedas do not owe their authority to anybody. They are themselves the authority, being eternal, the knowledge of God. They were never written, never created. They have existed throughout time, just as creation is infinite and eternal, without beginning and without end. So is the knowledge of God without beginning and without end. And this knowledge is what is meant by the Vedas, with to know. The mass of knowledge called the Vedanta was discovered by personages called rishis, and the rishis is defined as the mantra drashtas, a seer of thought. Not that the thought was his own. Whenever you hear that a certain passage of the Vedas came from a certain rishi, never think that he wrote it or created it out of his mind. It was the seer of the thought which already existed. It existed in the universe eternally. This sage was the discoverer. The rishis were spiritual discoverers. This mass of writing, the Vedas, is divided principally into two parts: the Karmakanda and the Jananakanda, the work portion and the knowledge portion, the ceremonial and the spiritual. The work portion consists of various sacrifices. Most of them of late have been given up as not practicable under present circumstances, but others remain to the day in some shape or other. The main ideas of the Karmakanda, which consists of the duties of man, the duties of the student, of the householder, of the recluse, and the various duties of the different stations of life, are followed more or less down to the present day. But the spiritual portion of our religion is in the second part, the Jananakanda, the Vedanta, the end of Vedas, the gist, the goal of the Vedas. The essence of the knowledge of the Vedas was called by the name of Vedanta, which comprises the Upanishads. And all the sections of India, the dualists, qualified monists, Monists or the Shaivitis, Vaishnavitis, Shaktas, Shauryas, Ganapatyas. Each one that dares to come within the fold of Hinduism must acknowledge the Upanishads of the Vedas. They can have their own interpretations and can interpret them in their own ways, but they must obey the authority. That is why we want to use the word Vedantist instead of Hindus. All the philosophers of India who are orthodox have to acknowledge the authority of the Vedanta. And all our present day religions, however crude some of them may appear to be, however inexplicable some of their purposes may seem, one who understands them and studies them can trace them back to the ideas of the Upanishads. So deeply have these Upanishads sunk into our race that those of you who study the symbology of the crudest religion of the Hindus will be astonished to find sometimes figurative expressions of the Upanishads. The Upanishads become symbolized after a time into figures and so forth. Great spiritual and philosophical ideas in the Upanishads are today with us, converted into household worship in the form of symbols. Thus, the various symbols now used by us are come from the Vedanta because in Vedanta, they are used as figures, and these ideas spread among the nation and permeated it throughout until they became a part of the everyday life as symbols.